The all-new generation of the Audi Q3 and our full review on Autogefuehl, your #1 resource for in-depth car reviews and your #1 community to discuss cars. Today with Thomas. And the exterior, interior, we have different styles and trims for you, very interesting. And the driving experience with this all-new generation, which is really different than the one from the predecessor. So a lot to look out for, also great landscape in the Alpine regions of Italy here today for you in Full HD, full screen and full length. Let's go! The Audi Q3 is built in Hungary, and this all-new generation has a bigger front grille with the so-called Audi single-frame grille. This is a so-called first edition that also features those dark Audi rings right there. You cannot get them later, at least that's what they say at the moment. This is also the S-Line with a sportier trim here with the bumpers and those air intake graphic because it's all shut off. The lamps, they come with LED standard, but then in different trims, so depending also if you pick the high beam and stuff. Interesting daytime running light, and in the higher LED trims you also have, for example, this cascading turning indicator light. So when you, for example, go left or right, then you also have this right here in the LED daytime running light signature. 4.48 meters or 14'7" is the total length of the new Q3. That's about 10 centimeters longer than the predecessor generation. And the rims, they start from 17 inch and go up to 20 inch. That's what we see at the moment. How does that play out for the comfort? We'll see later about that. And there are also 3 different suspensions available. A base suspension, then an adaptive suspension, and today we're testing the sport suspension, which sits a little bit lower and is also stiffer. Let's see about how that plays out in the driving part. You can get also different contrast colors here for the lower part in gray or black. And so you can have a contrast color to the bright one here, for example, in this orange. Soon I'll show you also a color variation. This one also the S-Line exterior with the badge right there. Then also with dark framed windows. You can also get them in chrome. You can soon also take a look how that looks like. And interesting, the same thing that the Q5 is carrying basically, this dropping line here for the design. You can see it been raised right there and also in the rear part. And indeed the Q5 carries a similar design element. That's also the reason why they look so much alike now. And finally the rear end, so the car has become a little bit wider if you compare it to the predecessor, and also with a nice daytime running light signature graphic right there. Also a black Q3 logo here in this first edition. It is somewhat, of course, a typical MQB compact car from the Volkswagen Corporation hatch, so they all look somehow similar. But I think the good thing is that you don't lose too much room on the inside. You can already see that here from the outside. And besides our Pulse orange car, let me show you some different colors. This one here, Floret Silver, also with a roof bag, so you can see that it's also possible. Then also with chrome frame around the windows as a contrast to our main car that has the dark frames. And my favorite color, Turbo Blue, a really bright blue color. Here in this case with 19-inch rims in a 2-color scheme. Also with chrome frame around the windows. I think it looks a little bit more elegant that way. Of course, the dark frames then would be more aggressive. And you can also see how the Audi rings look like when they are not all black. So I would definitely pick this one out of those 3. Which one would you? And we organized yet another vehicle for you with another color. This is Chronos Gray. Also with 19-inch rims, so a little bit smaller like the blue one. Not the 20-inch from the orange one. And also this car will be very important later on because this one has the adaptive suspension. So we'll also test that later on in the driving part, where we'll have the sport suspension with the petrol and the diesel here with the adaptive suspension, so we can tell you more about which suspension to pick and also which engine to go for. So with the engines, all come now with the particle filter, and the diesels also with the SCR injection. They're all 4-cylinder engines. So you can see here the transverse mount. It's also supposed to be in this very MQB platform, the MQB A2 platform, similar with the Volkswagen Tiguan. And yes, the car do share a lot, but also some differences for sure. So on the diesel side, you have the 2-liter TDI with 150 or 190 horsepower. And on the petrol side here, the TFSI, either 1.5 liter with 150 horsepower, or then this one, the 2-liter TFSI with 190, or today the top spec 230 horsepower. The bigger horsepower engines are always connected with the all-wheel drive, so front plus rear on demand. And the entry engines you can also get with front-wheel drive. So this is the car key. Usually you don't need the flip out keyless entry. Here put your hand on the outside to close it and the inside to open it. Yeah, there we go. Then inside of the doors there's this Alcantara package in orange, gray or brown. I will soon show you also the different colors. Orange of course, let's say, very special. Hard plastics, well, yeah, it's a little bit soft, but no, not really that soft, but also not super hard, something in between. Interesting is that we have the door handle basically in the opposite direction. And when you think about it, opening it like this, it comes actually, let's say, more ergonomic than the other way around. Why not doing it that way? Good quality of the buttons for the window levers there. You could open the trunk right there, and also bigger bottles do fit. Then the new interior, pretty interesting. At the moment you can see the screens are all offline, so just a dark area. I will soon elaborate more on the different screens that are available. Here is the S-Line, exterior and interior, with a flat bottom steering wheel, for example. And then those seats, there are 2 basic seats available. A base seat, which has more room, and then this one here is the sport seat. The base seat is available in fabric and also in full leatherette. That's cool. And then the sport seat also with different surfaces. Here in this case, you can see here a little bit more shoulder support, for example, in the sport seat. In the sport seat, available with either a fabric leatherette mix with just minor animal skin material. I will soon show you those as well in a different car. Then they are available with Alcantara on the inside and animal skin on the outside. And this one is the full animal skin pack for the most cost-worthy option. And of course with all the drawbacks from animal skin. So the Alcantara package, as I mentioned earlier, not only in orange and also gray, and here the brown one. So different colors available for this Alcantara package. You can see it at the side of the seats and also at the dashboard again. In this turbo blue car we have the grey Alcantara package right here. This is the most subtle one. I will go for this one. And you can see here also the seats with cloth or fabric on the inside and leatherette on the outside, and also with some Alcantara essence. Also the S Sport seats, really cool. I would exactly also pick this combination for the inside. Stays cool in summer and also warm in winter. This is the perfect combination, I think. And here we have a grey color of the seat. By the way, you could see those are new seats and how the animal skin wears out quite fast. But those ones here are the Alcantara mix seats. So you have Alcantara on the outside and animal skin on the inside. But as I said, the best is to go for the fabric seats or for the fabric leatherette small animal skin part mix. And now let's get inside. It's very easy, and you have this upright SUV seating position. It is not a super high SUV seating position in this Audi Q3. So if you think about a Volvo XC40 or Volkswagen Tiguan, for example, you sit a little bit higher. Maybe it's also just felt the way the cockpit is oriented, but I can just tell you what I actually see and feel in this vehicle. The seats, they start with a manual option, and then you can also go electric to move them. That's of course pretty handy. There's also an electric support here for the lumbar area in the lower part, and the manual one for making the seat a little bit longer. Then you can adjust the steering wheel in a manual way. It's a very easy option and it feels super smooth. That's one of those details where you feel that the build quality is extremely high. I'm 1.86 m or 6'1", and that leaves me a lot of headroom still. If you pick the optional panoramic roof, I think in our static review first I showed you also one, then the headroom will be a little bit reduced, but you'll still be fine also when you're quite tall. The interior overview right there, have a horizontal layout again with this table style here with the Alcantara package. If you don't have the Alcantara package, by the way, then you have a harder surface, but still with the structure it's also okay. Then the top part of the dashboard, it's not super hard pack, it's a mix of hard and soft touch, I would call it that way. The steering is quite large. Here again with a flat bottom, but you can very well reach the controls of the digital dashboard right there. And when I turn on, you can see that the screens come to life and there are different sizes available. It's a little bit complicated, therefore listen carefully now. So it starts on the left side with 10.25 inch. Whoa, that's music. Whoa. Great music system, by the way. So this optional 15 speakers Bang & Olufsen sound system, I can really recommend it for music lovers, although it's very expensive. So 10.25 inch on the left standard without GPS. Next step would be the same size 10.25 inch but with GPS. That's then called Virtual Cockpit. The lowest one just Digital Cockpit. And this one here is the Virtual Cockpit Plus 12.3 inch as we know it with GPS. And on the right side we'd start with 8.8 inch screen, smaller one, then the optional 10.1 inch screen as we see it right now. So here, this is then the top trim, so to say. I think they really should let go of the strategy. I mean, yes, you cannot get any analog instruments anymore, so to say, oh, I always get a digital screen. But then you start with a smaller one and also one without all the functions. I don't like that strategy. Or do you? So, and other than that, what's still cool, you have the manual climate unit still with metal knurled turning knobs here, really cool, and also with a good clicking sound, for example, especially here, seat heating. In the lower part, you can have the drive selector for the drive modes, still also on the volume knob, but you cannot really reach it that well. However, it's rather for the co-driver, and that's totally okay, because as a driver you can just use it here or at the steering wheel. Then the automatic gearbox, dual clutch, electric handbrake, and finally adaptive cup holders. So the processing quality here is really superb. Audi on top of the game in this segment. So the virtual cockpit has different views. You can have, for example, the assistance systems. You can have the GPS all the way, or just a little bit closer to the middle. Then you see the speed a little bit bigger. So you have a lot of choices how to do it, and also to zoom in and out. You can do it at the steering wheel with a knob. So it's a very cool system for sure. So this top display here, I mean, it's a great resolution here. Look at our area of Tyrol, really cool here. Wow, it looks so amazing, and the processor is also very fast. The same CPU unit than used in the A8, A6, so in the bigger Audi models. And you also have this touch screen. You can browse through telephone either via Bluetooth connection or then with Apple CarPlay or Android Auto with the cable connection here and under phone apps. So that would be an Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, all available. And vehicle, you can, for example, have the Audi Drive Select also here, but you can also just hotkey them in the lower area. So everything is very well to see and also intuitive to use. You directly see what's going on. And there's an optional rear view camera, really cool, a great resolution in the middle part here, and on the top part you can see the 360 view from above. And we also have this helping lines to see where are you actually going then. So the inner part is the actual car, and then where you would be changing it. You can also change the views then right here to this bigger view from above, just a rear view camera with a bigger angle. Also just the front tires, for example, that you do not damage those 20-inch rims. You can also deactivate it. And for example, also to the view to the front end again. So in the lower part you also have an inductive charging, but if you use Apple CarPlay anyway, so yeah, there we go. Didn't even have to turn on the engine for that. So it's charging now, and on the other side, one normal USB slot and a USB-C slot, so you have the choice there. I think that's good, definitely for a transition. And finally, the middle armrest, well attached, with some more room inside. So also the space we have here on the interior has increased. So let's get in the rear, and this is also something which changed if you compare it to the predecessor. You have some more legroom now. I mean, I have the seat a little bit back now as I was driving, of course. It does fit with my knees. I could also be driving with the seat a little bit more in the front. That was possible. It was just a little bit cozy now. So this works for tall adults. We have no panoramic roof inbuilt here. And this works also with the 1.86 or 6'1". And the cool thing is, of course, that you can move the bench. This is standard equipment. You can move it backward and forward. I can show you that here on the other side, how far that goes. Here we go. So that's really a difference then. So you can make the trunk a little bit larger or have more legroom. Isofix at the outside of the seats. You can flip the seats from here like this. But I'll show you that, of course, from the trunk as well. And you can also vary a little bit in the seating angle. That's cool because you can then really decide if you want a more leaning back position or you want it a little bit more upright. You can decide about that. Then you have this armrest with some cup holders inside. And, And this also works as a ski hatch just to fold the middle part. And last but not least, in the lower part we have two standard USB slots and a 12-volt power supply. So you can open the trunk with the key or with the button right there, or also with this foot kick open mechanism. Here we go, it's quite handy. Yeah, I can really stand underneath. That's really cool. Of course, if you have a lower basement garage, you can just also put it like this and then hold the closing button until a beeping sound is being heard. Then you can just, it opens just like here. So it's a good feature, and almost every electric tailgate car has it. Then, well, there are different capacities available. Look at this standard setup. That would be 530 liters. But then if you look here, I've made the bench, you can show you earlier, 15 centimeters front in the back. You can actually push it on the rail. Now, as it is now, when I would put both forward, it would be 675 liters. So you can vary that a little bit. And the maximum setup then, if I flip all the seats, that would be 1,525 liters. That's like this when I put it right there. Now I reach over for this one. Here we go. Then of course it's better to close this gap right there. So you're very flexible. I'll soon show you also how it looks like with luggage. This net here, I mean, you can secure some stuff. You don't need to have it. And then what's also interesting is below here, there's some more room still left. Yeah, this is then a little bit unpractical with that net to open that. So here we go. And for example, you can store the net right here, like this. And this one is in this case sound system equipment. Great sound, I can tell you, from this optional sound system. And when we remove the top cover right there, I mean, I like to transport bicycles in cars, and then I'm always asking myself, first of all, here you can let that stand open. Oh, Holger's almost crashing here with the camera. And then put the cover underneath. So, how was that meant? Maybe the other way around. Yeah, you see, this is live on tape. So it's not all shiny as it is. Just like this, it seems. Is it? Okay, then this gets ripped off. Yeah, and now I remember from the static preview. Yeah, I'm sure you guys laughing your beep off at the moment. So when you remove those side pads, then it does fit in, and so here we go. And here we have another display of what you can actually fit in the trunk of this vehicle. So this looks even more massive, of course, than when it would be totally empty. Look also how the other suitcases are stacked up there. I mean, they really tested around what is the maximum size they could put in the bags. It really looks great. but I think it shows you clearly that it gained a lot of trunk capacity when you compare it to the predecessor. Welcome to Thomas's driving lounge with the driving part of the Audi Q3 in this new generation. So this vehicle here equipped with 20-inch rims and the sports suspension, so picked from those 3 available suspensions. Really the sporty setup you can have, also with 231 horsepower, 2-liter TFSI. So this is really the sports Q3 so far, until the later we'll probably again make it like an SQ3 or probably also even again an RS Q3. But so far the sportiest normal Q3. And we are here in Italy today. It's not, the Italy you would imagine, because it's the Alpine Italy, so to say. And the good thing is, let's go to the dynamic mode directly. So dynamic mode, then the sports shifting mode is also activated, and let's see how sporty this car really is. Soon we'll also get to the motorway in the second part, and also tell you more about the acceleration and speed there, and more the everyday driving features. Now, let's have it sporty. So quite nice sound as well, although it's just a very small engine. This S-line here we have, and also there's basically a package with the sports suspension, the progressive steering, and also the 20-inch rims. There's one package, and the progressive steering is really great. So you see, I don't have to turn the steering that much. That really helps me for parking in and out, of course, in the city, but then in these agile driving situations, I can keep both hands at the steering wheel all the time. I don't have to grab around. And it also conveys a very good feeling, connection to the road. See now in this bend, just have to turn a little bit more, but only because it's really a hair needle pen. So right here now, if you have something like 90 degrees, no problem. So I really like the steering ratio they have here. The steering wheel could be a little bit smaller, and would be a little bit better to handle. Wow, really cool. And here also the stiff setup with the sports suspension and 20-inch rims also plays a good role. So it doesn't really feel like an SUV, it feels more like a small sports car, or like a hot hatch already, and without having the S or the RS version. That's pretty cool. In the S driving mode we also keep it at a little bit lower gears. However, it's not really tuned for uphill racing, so sometimes, for example, here now in 4th gear, so then you can use the shifting pedals and you stay in manual mode. So the gears are not changed automatically then. They can also shift back, for example, now to 2nd gear, and the dual clutch transmission does a great job doing that. Now you can also stay in 2nd gear to have a little bit more boost. And the engine is really very powerful. The acceleration figure with the 6.3 seconds also pretty cool. Well, in the all-wheel drive, since it's also giving you torque to the rear wheels, you don't feel that you would be driving, such a predominantly front-wheel drive car. There's always more torque going over the front wheels, yes, but you don't feel that it would be understeering so much. So I think they managed that very well too. What a lovely road! I hope you guys are also enjoying it. And indeed, it's an SUV that you can enjoy while driving. And also if you think about, wow, what a view, isn't that great? So if you also think about some of the competitors, this one here is surely then also among the sportiest, especially in this very setup. And also feels a little bit smaller than it actually is. If you compare it to the predecessor generation, this one here has definitely grown up. It drives on the one hand smoother, more refined, is more silent as for the wind insulation. We'll also test that soon on the motorway. and is really way sportier, especially if you have the sport suspension. We'll see how that plays out then later on in other driving situations, but here of course it's really cool when you just go left to right and back again. Also with the manual pedals here. And not even, when I'm accelerating in between, not even pushing it all the way because I would be too fast and maybe catching up to some other vehicles. When you want to overtake someone, you can also, for example, use the shifting pedals here, that you get more boost directly, and sometimes it's even safer to accelerate a little bit fast and then you get that maneuver done. So let's face this Toyota Auris in front of us. Maybe we can overtake there when there's a construction site or something. Oh, there's a traffic light. So that was really cool. Amazing ride in a sporty way. But what about when you drive a little bit less sporty or on the motorway? So what about usual traffic? So not the special agile driving test, but when you're just on the road in the city maybe and on the motorway. So what you feel with this combination of sport suspension and also the 20-inch rims, it is a little bit harsh. So the bigger the tires are, the less comfort you have, the less rolling comfort, of course. And 20-inch rims are really huge for such a vehicle. And then when you also have the sport suspension, so not the base and not the adaptive one, it really gets a little bit rough. I mean, it's still suitable for everyday driving, but if you seek comfort, then you should definitely stick to the base suspension or the adaptive one, and also go a little bit smaller with those tires so that you don't pick the biggest ones. When the road is even, then it's of course a very good driving feeling, and also a sporty one as we've just shown you. That's pretty cool. And the interesting thing is also that the car really feels a little bit smaller and shorter than it actually is. That also speaks for the agility of this vehicle. You also have a good overview. So also the side here, this A-pillar is not too thick, for example. You can really see that very well, everything. Also to the rear with this frameless mirror. The steering wheel again is a little bit big, I think. So the car would probably feel a little bit more agile when it was a little bit smaller. And soon we'll also get to the motorway and see what about the sound insulation, and also when we push a little bit harder, drive a little bit faster and so on. Also runs very well in the straightaway, really silent here so far at the lower speeds. So the car also enables you to relax a lot. And now to the side, you can see very well in the side mirrors. We also have a blind spot monitor, as I can soon show you that too. At the moment I have the GPS mounted in the virtual cockpit. That also helps me not to be distracted, like to look here. I can really look straight in those instruments. That's really cool while driving. And maybe also the co-driver can check something else on the infotainment screen. Here again in the corner, precise steering. I think we go with the telepass. We have this mounted here. It's always very weird, those motorways where you have to pay for. We don't know that in Germany yet. And I hope it will also stay that way. So here we go. I'm still in the D mode, the normal driving mode. Here again, a very neutral, balanced feeling in the corner, and due to the sport suspension, there's hardly any tilting. So this is of course really helpful when you go a little bit fast. I want to have some more fun. That's really cool then with the suspension. And still, even though if it's a sport suspension, it's still more comfortable than a lot of the other competitors in the base setup. So now some acceleration on the motorway. We'll go to the sport mode. So we have a faster downshift, And since we can drive 110 here now, we drop back to 60, and then we go from 60 kilometers to 110. Let's go. Plop, that's it. Wow, that was pretty impressive. The all-wheel drive also delivers it in a very constant and harmonious way. So the system here, the Quattro, in this case, there are different kinds of Quattro systems. It's just one brand name. So we have predominantly front-wheel drive, and then also torque is transported to the rear wheels, especially when you accelerate very hard. And the acceleration figures, as I said earlier, 6.3 seconds to 100 kilometers or 62 miles an hour. It's really impressive, so a very fast one. Of course, I also want to talk about the consumption, and I mean, with those acceleration tests, you cannot really say that so far. Usually it's very good when you have like a minimum consumption, you know, when you reset it, for example, here on the motorway, and then you can say, usually from the minimum consumption on, with cruise control on the motorway, you can then add, some 2 liters on 1 kilometer, something, when you have more city driving and so on. Adaptive cruise control is also one of the very good features you can pick. I have it also here in this very vehicle, and it's on at the moment. It's working very well. Let's also see how the car is then reducing the speed when we face, for example, the car in front of us very soon now. On the tunnel, you can also see how the car looks like in the tunnel. Now the radar system is picking it up. I'm not decreasing the speed. See, the car is doing that for me, and when I move out of the shade, here again, nothing doing with my foot, car is increasing speed. They really got that system quite well. So indeed, the car delivers you a very refined driving feeling, and I mean, you should also be able to hear that on camera. We're driving more than 100 kilometers now, or more than 60 miles an hour, and it's super silent in here. So sound insulation wise, a great job, and probably among, or maybe also the most silent compact SUV we've driven so far. Funnily is also that although it has the same length in the Volkswagen Tiguan, and it's on the same platform, this one here feels kind of smaller and somehow a little bit more agile. This might be due to the cockpit layout, because it's also more sporty oriented around the driver, and you don't sit too high in comparison, for example, to Tiguan. Or also if you compare it to a Seat Ateca, which is a little bit different than when you look at the platform in detail. The same base platform, but then they have like this MQB A1, A2 and A0, so that's a little differentiation then. But very interesting that they still have somehow own driving feelings, although they all share a lot of technology. So, also what I can tell you from driving on the motorway here, this really sets a benchmark, I think. So, if you think about how should a compact SUV drive, this is probably just it. You can maybe argue that some might expect a stronger SUV feeling, because you really don't sit too high. It doesn't feel that much as an SUV, so it also has something of a compact vehicle, somehow in between. So, and for example, when I buy an SUV, I really want that high SUV seating position. It's not that you don't get it here at all. It's just that in some of the competitors, they set more focus on this SUV driving feeling. That's again just a matter of preference, what you really prefer. So we can also click through this front menu of the digital instruments, always with a nice clicking sound when I'm using that. And just cruise control here on the motorway at 110 kilometers an hour. And that gives me an average of 8.7 liters on 100 kilometers at the moment. So something between 8 and 9 liters. That's not too good. So just using cruise control, it should definitely be better. So let's say 9 liters on 100 kilometers. You have to be probably even capable with more than that when you take into account that you would have some stop and go in city driving or something. And that would be something 25 mpg something. So really not a good result here. So, and we've seen it a lot, that the engines here from the Volkswagen Corporation, so VW, Audi, Skoda, Seat, they are great in performance. They are also very silent. They feel so refined when you drive them. You can enjoy when you need the power, which just shown you as well. It has a lot of power. At the same time, you can drive it very slow and calmly. Really feels good overall. It's perfect. Also with the dual clutch, then with the transmission, you either don't feel the transitions at all from the shifting, or if you really want it, for example in sport mode, it hammers right in. But then again, consumption is often quite high. With the drive select, by the way, we can switch from this auto mode also into the efficiency mode. That is, for example, decreasing the throttle input, helps you a little bit to save fuel, and also this car is just rolling. And you can go to the dynamic mode, as we shown you earlier, that then lets the car work a little bit more, goes to the S mode, goes up gear down, turns up the RPMs and so on. So you're able to adjust that. And if you have the adaptive suspension, also the dampers are fitted accordingly, so it has a little sharper rate than when you're at the dynamic mode, and comfort mode is also a little bit softer than here. When you have this sport suspension here, I mean the steering is a little bit softer in the comfort mode, for example. In the sports mode a little bit hard, but that's the biggest difference. Then the other big difference is really that when you're in a dynamic mode, it goes to this S shifting mode, and you have the changes right there. I mean, if you want the most power, then we can recommend this engine here. But again, if you want a better fuel economy, then you should go for another one, because this surely won't get prettier consumption-wise. You know, the new diesels also all have the particle filter plus the SCR injection. The petrol engines have the particle filters now too. So, you know, one thing is against the fine dust, like the microparticle dust for the particle filters, and the SCR is against the NOx, and the petrols don't need that, the diesels do. So if you want a better fuel economy, it's probably better that you go for the diesel in here, if that's available in your market. That's the automatic traffic announcement. It's good that you can also very well cancel it then while we're just hitting it. Other than that, of course, especially when you have to be concentrated here on the motorway, it's quite narrow. Driving here near Bozen in Italy. Better just look in the front to the instruments and don't play around with that so much. It's good that we still have those classic climate knobs that we can easily control. I can even do that, you know, by just looking to the front and feeling it around this metal knurled knob. That's really cool. So we still have, although everything is digitalized, this rather old school stuff, and it's really cool to have it, because you can so well control it. And then some things don't need to be more complicated than they are at the moment, just for the purpose of making it even more digital, I think. Or what do you think? So, I think also on the motorway, this guy really did a fantastic job. So driving-wise, they really mastered everything. It's just that I would recommend you not to go for the sport suspension and the big rims unless your main purpose of buying a compact SUV is to drive sporty still with a compact SUV. So now we switched vehicles. This one here with the adaptive suspension and 19-inch rims, as well as the TDI, the diesel with 150 horsepower, still all-wheel drive, but manual transmission, so we have even more variation for you. It's really strange that this 150 horsepower diesel is either available with all-wheel drive and manual gearbox or automatic and front-wheel drive. Usually it's, they make it the other way around, that all-wheel drive and automatic is combined and front-wheel drive and manual to save cost or something. That's how it is here. So, we'll later also tell you something about the consumption of this diesel. At the moment, of course, not, because we are primarily going downhill. Here on this downhill, it's good to test the suspension and also the steering setup. Since the sports car, let's talk about it in that way. So this sports setup we had earlier, I felt that the steering with the progressive steering there was maybe a little bit better. However, the car already has from base setup a rather progressive steering, so that's good. You can see I don't have to steer that much, so it's still pretty cool. Also with a good grip handle, it's also quite slim and sporty, like that. The manual gearbox, the automatic surely offers you more comfort while driving, especially when in traffic situations. However, this manual gearbox is quite cool. Yes, the shifting lever maybe looks a little bit old school, but the ways you shift, what you feel, is actually quite smooth. Here, of course, when you're going down, you can stay in a lower gear to use some of the engine brake too. When you shift up, for example, there's hardly any resistance, but still you somehow feel how you're shifting. I had better manual gearboxes. Yeah, that's for sure. Pretty seldom also that we had a manual gearbox in Audi. So overall, I can still recommend to go for the automatic gearbox, the S-Tronic, just to add some more comfort. This one would be theoretically then to save some money, but then again, when you have the engine with the all-wheel drive, it's already more cost intensive. So probably that's not a thing where you should save money. So maybe get this car, which is a very comfortable compact SUV, more in a comfortable gearbox as well. Then you can see when I'm in those corners here, still good sporty ride with the adaptive suspension. We can also set it here, for example, to the dynamic mode to make it a little bit stiffer then from the reaction. So here you have the choice, and it really adapts accordingly. And it handles still so well. So this is also one of the key findings now. So you do not need the sport suspension just to have the car handling very well. And again, also the 19-inch rims, a little bit smaller, give us a little bit more comfort. Yeah, they still look great. It's not a problem. I think you can also go with 18-inch and the car still looks great, and you reduce the risk even a little bit more that you damage those rims. And you can see I'm not racing this downhill, but also not super slow, but I'm easily catching up to those SUVs in front of us because the car is actually quite quick and great in handling. So also a good sporty result here from the adaptive suspension. Let's see how that one changes when I go to the comfort mode. Yeah, I think it shakes up a little bit more. What do you say, Holger? This co-driver shakes more a little bit in comfort mode. So it is noticeable that it's a little bit softer, especially going when you go like this and shake the co-driver a little bit around. That looks funny, Holger. And then again, do it in dynamic mode. Let's see. Yeah, so the car shakes less then. Again, not a super huge difference, but it is noticeable, so you have the choice then for that, especially when you're going then on the motorway very soon. Then you can leave it in the comfort mode just to be a little bit more comfortable. Or when you're going really higher speed at the motorway, then you might want, again, a little stiffer setup. So the good thing with this adaptive suspension is you're not lost with just one setting. you can really adapt your setting if you just feel one day like this, or depending on the situation. However, I'm also always a friend of not boosting the costs for each vehicle, because this car can get super expensive. It's one of the downsides. Well, that's still the navigation commands. Good thing is that you can easily also deactivate those voice commands. Also, an advantage of the compact SUV, the smaller ones, that was a very narrow situation in the streets here. We very often have that in Europe. And then with a compact SUV, you can still remain calm and cool, and it will probably, most probably work. Whereas when you have a bigger SUV, it can actually be a problem, and you say, oh, you have to stop, and then, that won't fit, the car is too wide. But it's no problem with this one here. So I really like those compact SUV setup because you already have the high seating position, but you're not already that wide, that long, that it would give you problems in the city. So I think it's a very good compromise where a lot of people can actually use the vehicle for various purposes, and not to forget, especially when you have the bench set forward, that the trunk area, just when the bench is forward, then has then a larger base loading volume than the Audi A6. Pretty interesting. So especially in the volume, as we shown you earlier, the car really increased a lot in the trunk area, what you can do with it. Here, by the way, as for the acceleration, when we, for example, go to second gear with this TDI and 30 kilometers an hour to 70, I'll make a gauge is a little bit bigger, let's go. Plop, that's it. So you can see the diesel takes some time until the power sets in, until the turbo really sets in, until the torque sets in. There the petrol engine has an advantage because it's more powerful just from the lower RPMs, but then suddenly the torque sets in for the diesel and it's really powerful too. And I will show you also that very soon now on the motorway, that the diesel is quite good for the motorway, but for countryside routes in the city, the petrol feels more alive. And definitely also in this 230 horsepower spec, which is then again a little bit expensive. So from the low RPMs out, the diesel here, with the 150 horsepower variant, doesn't feel that powerful sometimes. Also when you're, for example, going uphill. But when you're here in the dynamic mode, then the RPMs are turned up higher, and there's a good reaction. So I'm pretty happy with the auto function to have a little bit softer suspension. You can also, for example, feel it with the speed bumps. And then again, just go a gear down, and then the diesel also gives you some more power. Yes, the petrol engine is more fun to drive, but maybe my tip for today would be to not pick the highest petrol engine spec, because that's also very expensive, but maybe go for a little smaller horsepower petrol engine, or for the 1.5, or I think the best setup would be the 2-liter one with 190 horsepower. That could be good compromise between price performance as for that. But the diesel will for sure give us a better fuel economy. I'll reset. Now going down to 3.5 liters, that's really unrealistic because we're just going downhill. So as soon as we hit the motorway very soon, I'll reset the MPG meter, and I'll also tell you what the consumption is in this respect there. So yes, adaptive suspension is cool. Base suspension will probably also do fine. Adaptive suspension if you have a little bit more budget. Sport suspension, we can definitely advise against that because it reduces the comfort. 20-inch rims as well for the driving, that just look cool. 19-inch is still okay, especially in combination with the adaptive suspension. If you go with a base suspension, probably go for the 18-inch rims. Driving-wise, again, super silent, very harmonious ride, really cool. I've been recently also talking about like a sovereignty of the ride. We've been talking about that language-wise, if you can really say that. I think it's like a cool term to say, how a car is basically flawless in driving when it's sovereign. what you think, British and American guys, for using this term. Would be interested in your feedback. Really nice light we have here now. So beautiful. There we go.
Bitte in 200 Metern am Ende der Straße links abbiegen.
I thought I could. Why can I deactivate it again? Here, I think, right? Options and then GPS. I hope some of you guys from Tyrol will not be mad if I mentioned we were in Italy. I'm not sure how you think about it, so I know that you're from Tyrol and not from Italy. You know, always those regional things. So, and here we go. Yeah, it's so much fun to drive this car. Really cool. And funny thing is that with the adaptive suspension, the car feels a little bit more SUV-ish. So the sport suspension was that stiff, but as I said earlier, it feels more like a compact hatch. And here with the adaptive suspension, especially when you are in the normal auto mode, not in this dynamic setting, it really feels more like an SUV. And that, I think, would be also very important to me, because I want an SUV to exactly feel like an SUV. It's funny that some of the traffic signs here are also in German, and a lot of people really speak German here. Interesting, always those regions where, you know, between country borders, where different cultures mix and also different languages are spoken. Very interesting regions here. And you can see here also all the way around, this is a very famous region here, close to Bozen in South Tyrol, for apples, great apples, and if you taste one of them, really delicious. And yeah, we know one criticism point about the really cool, silent but yet powerful running petrol engine was that the consumption was just too high. I hope we can solve that here now with the diesel. The question is always, how many kilometers are you blind spot monitor? By the way, now you can finally see it very well. It's also a very good visualization here with the yellow dot, and as soon as I see here, when I set the turning indicator, then it's also flashing. So here again, just the light, and when I set the turning indicator, he really wants to make the turn, and there's something, then you get this flash warning. So that's a very good system. And here in those Volkswagen AG cars, you can see that the blind spot monitor already reacts when the car is approaching from the rear, not only in the moment where it's in the blind spot. You can then again argue that it's good that when it's in the blind spot at the moment, like in the PSA Corporation, the French cars, that you really know what's going on. But on the other hand, of course, cars are accelerating, and then maybe it's at some point too late, when it flashes too late, basically. So I think this system, to me, some of it's a little bit better. So I set now to cruise control, 110 kilometers an hour. Drive a little bit, see how that one feels. Here also now at a higher speed, the adaptive suspension in the auto mode still gives us a good ride. So it's not that it would be too soft or something by no way. It's just, you know, a little bit more forgiving when there are some certain bumps on the road. Let's also test here again with dynamic mode. They get a little bit more feedback from the road, but it's still definitely more comfortable in the dynamic mode with the adaptive suspension than the base sport suspension, which is not an adaptive one. So sometimes there's also an adaptive sport suspension, but here it's really like base normal suspension, adaptive suspension, and the sport suspension, which is again a normal one, not adaptive. So that's the way they set it out here for the all-new Audi Q3. So dynamic mode here then gives me a little bit more stability maybe. I mean, it's not too easy to drive here because the motorway is quite narrow, and then also at the speed here, more than 60 miles an hour, 110 kilometers an hour. And still also the comfort mode makes it a little bit softer, but still you remain very well in control. And that's also to me one of the key characteristics of this very vehicle. You remain in control all the time, so you have a good feeling of the car. Overall, that makes the ride also very safe. And we can just stress again this, seeing that the speaker in the front of this optional Bang & Olufsen system, pretty expensive option, but it gives an amazing sound, probably the best sound we've heard so far in a compact SUV. So now looking at the consumption meter here at the moment, we're just at cruise control. So that's about 6.5 liters on 100 kilometers. I mean, that's definitely better than with the petrol engine where we had something close to 9. Still, when you just have the cruise control and here with the diesel, I think even that should be a little bit lower. So that's something, you know, and in the areas like close to 40 mpg. I mean, that's overall quite decent. I would wish that also this one here goes a little bit down. It seems to be dropping down here. I mean, on those driving events, we cannot give you like 100% indication of the fuel consumption, just let's say 90. The most reliable thing is again to test it at steady speeds on the motorway to give you basically a minimum consumption, and then you can add like 1 or 2 liter or deduct, let's say, 5 to 10 mpg for a figure when you would be driving it in traffic in a city and stop and go. So I don't think we will ever reach 5 liters or 47 mpg. Will be more liters or less mpg than that. I think close to 6 liters or then should be something around 40 mpg. That could be a realistic figure. So definitely better than with the petrol engine. And again, the question is how many kilometers are you driving per year? Then you can calculate if it really makes sense then to go for the more expensive diesel. Yeah, but overall, to say something about the driving characteristics of this car, it's definitely one of the best in class. Again, super silent. This is the most important factor for me. Feels so much evolved through the new generation here and all the experience they've put in the vehicle. And now to our conclusion for today with the all-new generation of the Audi Q3. For sure it has grown up in the exterior and you can get different bright colors as well, and styling choices can more individualize the car, and it almost looks like a smaller Q5. On the interior, a great processing quality, also more room all over the place in the rear and also especially in the trunk, so more usable. Yes, it has grown a little bit also in the exterior, but the usage of space, if you take that relation, has become even better. Then also full digitalization. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Great displays and so on, especially in the highest trim here. But I think a little bit complicated for the customer that you have so many different steps and screen sizes to go for. I think they could make it a little bit easier there. Audi is also on their way now for more sustainable materials overall. Last year they have ignored it pretty much. Now they finally listen, especially for their smaller cars. They also bring some animal skin alternatives. You know, there are some parts still, even in the leatherette seat and in the fabric leatherette seat, there are minor parts in real leather. Why? Well, the question is, you know, they are very conservative company, that's why. But they have removed basically almost all of it, and even in the animal skin full seats, they even have increased the part of leatherette and decreased the part of real leather. So they're now finally on a good path for sure also in this respect. Driving wise, was very cool indeed, very sporty, especially in this setup here today. Sound installation, superb. Overall, a car that gives you a lot of calmness but sportiness at the same time. It has not that kind of high SUV driving character, a little bit more compact size driving character. It's just a question what you prefer. And of course with the sport suspension and the 20-inch rims, a rather stiff ride. You have to like that. If you're, let's say, a normal comfort-seeking customer, just stay with the base suspension, smaller rims, or then adaptive suspension if you want to spend more money. Yeah, talking about money, 35,000 euros would be the base price in Germany. This car, as it stands here right there, easily over 50, maybe almost 60,000. So that gets super expensive, one of the most expensive out there in the compact SUV segment, but surely also one of the best. What do you think? Let's discuss this vehicle in the comments.